Welcome to Writing Black Joy Season 1. I am Sophia Robinson, and I'm a writing coach, editor, story listener, and the producer of Writing Black Joy, a virtual space that celebrates and centers the voices of Black writers with joyful stories. Here, you'll find my conversations with some of my favorite Black writers and storytellers, learn more about their projects and the joy they are bringing into the world, and find inspiration for your own creative ventures, as well as tips for writing poetry, blogs, creative nonfiction, fiction, plays, and so much more from all types of writers, as well as a sneak peek into writing life. You could even find your next favorite writer, book, poem, play, or blog. And if you are a Black writer who is looking for a coach or an editor to help you bring your joyful story into the world, click on my website below and find out how you can work with me. In the meantime, let's go to today's guest. All right, and let's go. So welcome back. And I have my guest with me today, Ekiuwa, and she is a children's book author. I'm going to let her introduce herself and tell us a bit about her books.
Thank you for that introduction, Sophia. Hi guys, my name is Ekiuwa Aire. I am a children's book author, and I write children's books that tell positive stories about African history and its legends. I have 2 books underneath my belt now. Book 1 was on Queen Idia of the Benin Kingdom, what we now know as Nigeria. And book 2 was on Queen Ijinga of Ndogo and Matamba, countries we now call Angola and the Democratic Republic of Congo.
Okay, perfect. And I'm really looking forward to that book too. I haven't seen that one yet, but I'm looking forward to it. I want you to tell us a bit about your writing journey.
Sure, I would say that my writing journey has been, the word I would use is interesting. And I say interesting because I started to write and I started on these projects because I was looking for books that fit the genre that I am writing on now. And I couldn't find anything. I couldn't find anything on African history for kids. And I realized that there was a gap that needed to be filled. And I love to write the books that I write now because in writing the books that I write now, I'm doing 3 things. I'm informing the world about a time, a culture, a person that made an impact to African history. I'm also telling an engaging story for kids because it's for kids, it has to be engaging. It has to be interesting, not just be serving out all of the facts. And in doing that, I am diversifying libraries all over the world. So it's been an interesting yet rewarding journey so far.
And I love that. I love that you kind of saw something that you felt a need for, you see a gap in the market and you're like, I think I'm going to write this book. And I love how it sort of worked out that you then do the research, but you're making it engaging. And I know you say it has to be engaging because it's kids, but I'm an adult and I want my history to be engaging too. So I really think that's a great move, especially for kids, but I'm sure you'll find that there are going to be parents out there who are going to be learning, that information along with the kids when they're reading it to them or when the kid's reading it. What's the age range? I meant to ask.
The age range of my books, it's a little fuzzy. I would say the more specific, super niche targeted age range would be, say, 6 to 10.
Okay.
But the books do 4 to 12.
Okay, so it could either be a parent reading it to a child or the child could be reading it themselves if they're a little bit older. That's a really good mixture for sure. Why is it important for you to tell these positive stories about these African legends and these African countries?
I think it is important because it does not exist. And I think that is a gap. There isn't anything out there that tells of these stories in a way that it's easy for the layman to understand. And there is a reason why African history is being only spoken about in specific niche groups among specific niche people, only if you happen to have a PhD in history, or if you happen to be, you do see them, you see quite a few people discussing it, but it's not very well read. These characters are not as well known as the Julius Caesars of the world, and there's a reason for that. And I think that it's important that we create that interest and that awareness about our history and our culture and that pride, because it gives kids a sense of identity, and it also keeps the conversation going, and our stories don't die.
I definitely agree with that. And I think it's true because, as you said, there's not, unless you are doing this very specific PhD or whatever, then this is not information that an everyday person might have, not even an everyday African person necessarily, person from any of the countries in Africa, or somebody who maybe lives in the US but is from the diaspora. So I think it's good to kind of put those stories out there, and definitely share it. I'm curious, how did you do your research?
I do read on African history. I read the
Mm-hmm.
literature, but I try in all of my books to not just read just the peer reviewed literature. I try to look at what people are saying, to listen to what others that may not be quote unquote peer reviewed are saying. I look in Facebook
Mm,
groups and I balance the information that the Africans, what they believe is the truth, to
mm-hmm.
what the peer reviewed journals are saying. So
And
I base my research on each book and each character based off of what I see in um, actual texts that are valid, as well as what the people, the culture feel about this character. A good example would be the Inshinga book, which
mm-hmm.
um, in a lot of the text, she was referred to as Nzinga, her name is spelled with a Z. And initially, I had written the book with her name spelled as Nzinga. And I was perusing a Portuguese Facebook group, an Angolan Facebook group, which was written in Portuguese.
Yeah.
The whole book is in Portuguese, and I'm translating what people are saying about Queen Njinga. And I saw that in Angola, they actually prefer that her name is spelled as with a J, and to them, that's the
Hmm.
correct spell her name. And I took that versus all these other texts, and I decided to
Yeah.
spell the way that the people want her name spelled. Her people want her name spelled.
Yeah, I love that so much. I think that's a really good way to kind of balance the academic. And I always think, I mean, this is an aside, but I always think sometimes, even when I read, because I have some friends that are in academia now, and even when I read academic reports of like the way life is now, I'm like, this does not represent everybody's life. And so you have to be careful with, academia. Is it really representative of everything that might have been going on at the time, or is it what was represented within those circles of academics who may, have different ways of thinking about things or doing things? So it's just something I always think about when I think about the difference between like what happens in academia and what can happen in general population. So I love that you kind of balance that.
Especially because academia at the time, what was referred to as academia at the time, the representatives of academia at the time were not as diverse as they are now. So you
Yeah.
really have to be careful with their version of the truth.
That's so true. That is so very true. So what is a quote from your work or someone that someone that you admire that represents joy for you?
Joy. Well, I would say, I don't know if this quote does represent joy, but this is one of my favorite quotes. And it's
Okay.
one of my most favorite, one of my most, I would say, someone I admire, James Baldwin. And the
Mm,
quote is, not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. And
mm,
I think what he's trying to say is that in trying to pursue everything that we pursue, we may not actually change anything, but unless you acknowledge and you try to change something, there's nothing that really
nothing.
un-
Yeah.
Yes, and with my journey, I acknowledge that what I saw was a gap, and I wanted to contribute to the quality and the perspective on a narrative regarding African history. And in doing this, I have zero clue that my books will have the impact that I hoped they would have. In starting this journey, I had no clue what I was doing. But at the end of the day, I'm extremely proud of my projects and what it has
Mm.
achieved so far and the potential for change that it does have.
And you should be. I think you should be. I think as an author, you do sometimes you kind of want that huge impact, and you don't know if it's going to have it or not. But you're right; it definitely won't have it if you don't take those steps. Like it absolutely won't. So you have to just take those steps and step out in faith that okay, something's going to happen, and we'll have to see what that thing is. I'd love to know, what is your proudest moment as a writer?
I would say it was in February when I presented my idiot book to my kids' school. So I visited their school as an author, and the fanfare in my home that went with that, it was weeks of when is the day, and the day came and they woke up excited and it's mommy's coming to the school as an author. It was, I can't quite describe it, but
Oh, I love that.
the pride and excitement that I gave my kids, and I know that's something that they would carry forever. And I think that ultimately that changed them to see mommy in that way in their
Yeah.
class as an author. And that was my proudest moment as a writer.
Oh, I love that so much. That sounds like it was such a real experience, to like be there as an author and your kids are there and they're really excited. I'm really so pleased that you were able to do that. So what was the hardest? I know that you and I have spoken before, and we kind of, since then, obviously you've published another book. What was the hardest part, you think, of this journey so far?
The hardest part of the journey so far, I would say what is the hardest part of the journey? I think it's balancing the need to, in the storytelling, the need to give out as much information about these characters as I want to give out, and keeping it simple and keeping it and remembering that this is for kids, and that later on if I want to write an in-depth analysis on Kuninjinga, I can do that for adults. But for kids, it's going to be painful to not tell them everything that I know in my head that's interesting about this lady. But we still try to remember that it's a children's and that we need to keep it simple. That is I think that is the hard part. Even in the next 2 books that I'm working on, I've been sitting on book 3 for a while, and I was looking at it just before we started talking, and the count is creeping up there, and I'm like, what to cut, and it's so painful to cut something, and that is the hardest part. Once it's done, I actually forget about it. Once I cut that page out, I'm like, it needs to go. Just it's gone. But the actual cutting of it is
difficult.
Yes.
Yeah, and that word count, I think I always used to struggle with that, even when I wrote like essays for assignments for university, and it's like it has to be 1,000 words, and I would happily write like 3,000, and I have to cut things out. And yeah, it can be painful, I guess, especially if you feel like everything that you put in is important. Like, how do you choose what to cut out? Yeah. Do you think you do an adult one? I know, you may not have been prepared for this question, but I'm curious. Do you think you'd ever write adult books about these characters?
I'm not sure. Maybe not for these characters, but okay. I will, because I think there's so many stories to be told. I know I started out as wanting to write 100 books, children's books, and now I'm down to 8. And so definitely there is no need to repeat these characters again in adults.
Yeah.
And many other stories to tell. But I will think about going either lower in age, because my books do start at 4, going lower in age and figuring out how to weave a tale that depicts African pride and culture into a baby book. And then I would also thinking about young adult readers as well. And I haven't, you're the first one that's asking me if I thought about for adults, full adults. I don't know, maybe not right now, but
Yeah.
you've put the seed in me now.
Ooh, we'll see. I know once you get an idea and you've made a decision, you'll run with it. So I will wait and see what happens. I'd love to talk a bit about your writing process. I know children's books. I have another friend who writes children's books, and they're kind of short. And so it's kind of deceptive because you think, oh, it's only, how many ever pages, and it'll be really quick and it'll be really easy. But I hear that is just not true at all. So tell me how, do you ever get, say, writer's block when you're writing, even though it's a short book, and how do you find you help yourself move through that process?
I just tell myself, honestly, that especially because I am in charge of the entire process. I'm not writing for a traditional publisher that has a deadline to meet. For me, I take it as a marathon, not a sprint. If I'm blocked, honestly, I'm blocked. There are 1,000,001 other things to do when I'm having a writer's block. For example, going back to book 3 that I am working on now, I was working on it frantically all through February, and I thought I was done. Slept on it for 2 months, went back to it a month later. And while I slept on it, I'm not just doing nothing. I'm working on marketing for my idea and my engineering. So much to do with Amazon, with my websites. It's always something to do when you're self-published. And so I pause on maybe writing for a while. And then I go and do marketing stuff. And then I go back to writing. And then I go back to, and I just do what I feel like doing when I feel like doing it. And that helps me mentally. And when I'm ready to look at it, I look at it. Because the way I publish my books, I don't do the print on demand. I know this is a very technical term, but print on demand is where when you write your books, you can upload them into Amazon, and Amazon prints them one at a time. And if, for example,
depends on who orders it.
Who orders, yes, based on order. And if you make a mistake, you can just change it on the next print run. But my book, I print them in bulk. So I print 3,000 books at a time.
Right.
And because of that, I really don't want to sleep on something that I would regret later. So I definitely take my time, and that has worked for me. I'm not in any kind of rush to get it out there. So when I do have a writer's block, and I did have a writer's block for book 3, I just waited it out, and I waited until it came to me. And when it came to me, when it comes to me, I continue. It's a marathon, not a sprint for me.
Yeah, and it sounds like you give yourself that permission to take a break, walk away, come back to it.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's something I even tell people, when whenever I've written a book or even a blog post, I write it, I shut the computer, I walk away. I go to sleep, I wake up, could be 2 days, a week, whatever. And then, as you said, you get up and you're like, okay, I know what I need to finish this thing, or whatever the case is. And so I think sometimes you do need that space from it and that distance. And you said that you don't do the print on demand, that you printed in bulk. Did you find there was an advantage to that? Because I did print on demand when I did mine, but I know people who do print on demand, but I also know people who've done the bulk printing. So I'm just curious.
I do both. So the print on demand.
Oh, okay, you do both.
Yeah, the print on demand is good because you have your books on Amazon that you could advertise, and it's cheaper and it's more flexible. But then bulk printing gives you the opportunity to sell from your websites, and you can make more money that way. You can sell directly to organizations. The margins are way better if you do it that way. You could do pop-up shops, which I've just started doing this summer as things are opening up. So you have a lot of your books, and from your basement, you go to a a location and you meet readers and you talk to people about your books. It's so much fun. That is not easy to do with the print on demand. The margin.
It's too, yeah, the margin is not awesome. You have to make the book really expensive. Even if you order author copies, you have to kind of have that price almost pushed up in order to get that margin that you want. And like for me, because I'm in Barbados, like having Amazon ship them here, I tried that with just a small batch, and it was just like, so either I have to double the price of this book, or I just have to accept that like these are gifts to my friends, because it is what it is. But it's so I think that's a great, like, there are a couple of authors that I know here, and a lot of them have done the bulk printing, and especially once you know that you have the market, or you're willing to kind of do the marketing. Because I think my fear was always like, I'd have this garage, like 3,000 books in it, and like they just be sitting there. But I guess
it does push you too.
It pushes you, yeah. It forces you to really make that effort to market and to get out there. And I think that's nice, because then, especially because you have like more books coming, you'll have those connections that you already made. And so then when you have the next set of books, people are going to be like, okay, we know you turn up, let's have your books here as well. I absolutely love that. That's such a good idea. What is one thing that you would tell a prospective writer?
Well, I think most writers do this, but just for those that may not be of this line of thinking, I would tell a prospective writer, and this is in line with what we were just discussing, that you should definitely not do it for the money, because writing is just like singing, I would think. We all know about the J.K. Rowlings of the world, but not everybody becomes a J.K. Rowling. Not everybody is going to sell that kind of volume and become extremely famous and become extremely wealthy for writing. And so if you see dollar signs in your future, and that is what is spurring you to write, it might not work out that way. I would say do it for the love of writing, do it for the love of what you're doing. If it's a lot of writers are doing it because they've always wanted to write this book that has been in their heart for a long time, or they're trying to change the libraries across the world. It could be a social change that you're trying to accomplish. Those are good goals for writing. And if that is your goal, then go for it. And if you do happen to make a ton of money along the process, good for you. But yes, that's my advice.
And I think that's good advice, because the reality of it is that just because you don't make a lot of money doesn't mean the book wasn't worth writing. And to me, that's the critical piece. Like, I feel like, there are gonna be books out there that, maybe they don't sell 1 million copies, but they're still really important books. And so I like that as well. You kind of do it for the love, and not for the money. And if the money comes, well, that is a real added bonus. So I am just curious, what sort of things do you like to read? If you have time to read. Because I know everybody doesn't, so.
Not everybody has time, and my answer actually touches on that. I like to read literature that teach me something. I'm so boring. Because it's not enough information. There's so much information on this earth, and there's not enough time to learn it. I am so aware of how much I don't know. And because of this, when I'm reading something, I want to make sure that what I'm reading is teaching me something new. And when what I read is informative, for me, it's like a win-win. You are entertaining me, you taught me something new. And that's what I favor when I'm looking for something to read.
Yeah, and I can see that you kind of took that into your writing as well, because you have something that's informative but also entertaining as well. So I can see that that's really been how you read is how you write, which I actually find is true for a lot of authors. So I I'm so glad that we were able to chat today. And I'd love to know, I'd love to tell the audience, like, where can they find you? Where can they follow you? Where can they find your books? Like, I'm going to put all the links within the posts that go along with this audio and video. But I'd love, for you to say where we can find you.
Sure. My books are available on my website, our-ancestries.com. I do offer free shipping above a certain dollar figure. So that's cool. And you do even get discounts when you purchase more than one book. So if you buy the Idia book or the Ijinga book, I think I do give 10% off on my website. Each of my books do come with a whole activity book, and
nice.
They have lesson plans and teacher units on my website as well. I have t-shirts and all sorts of accessories and stickers.
I love this.
I am busy, and everything is available on my website, where I also offer free worksheets that keep you, that offer ways to engage with African history, African cultures, African anything for kids. Everything is available on my website, our-ancestries.
Our-ancestries.com. Perfect. I love that. Okay, it was so nice chatting to you again. And I look forward to sharing your books and your story with my audience, and hopefully catching up again when you've finally published book 3 and 4, because I want to hear more about those as well. Thank you so much, Ekiuwa, for coming on, and I really appreciate you.
Thank you. It is always a pleasure speaking with you.
Perfect. All right, everyone. Bye. Thank you for joining us today. You can find out more about our guests in the notes below, and don't forget to hit subscribe to our channel so that you don't miss new episodes when they drop. And if this has inspired you to get your own writing project into the world, click on my website below and learn how you can work with me as a writing coach or an editor. Until next time, I send you big love from a small island.